Which is what if Naruto became the Forbidden Demon King and built a legendary harem with Hinata, Sakura, Tsunade, Konan, Temari, Mei, Ino, Kurenai, Tenten, Kushina, Kyuubi and Alara. Part 5. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A grin formed on Naruto's face, one that threatened to split his face in half. Very well. Naruto blurred from view as the battle began. He reappeared right next to Orochimaru, his fist already lashing out in a punch that had so much strength put into it, it would take the Sannin's head off. Orochimaru had just enough time to weave his body around the punch, twisting his body at an angle that should be impossible for humans to accomplish. It was like he could dislocate all his joints at will, or like he didn't actually have a backbone. He moved much like a snake would. Considering his summons, the man's way of movement was fitting. The hubby Sannin lashed out as he dodged the first attack, striking at Naruto with a knife-edged hand aimed at his throat. Because of Naruto's strength even when he was not using his Yuki, the attack wouldn't have done much more than cause him to stumble. However, he still had no intention of getting hit by Orochimaru, and so he dodged accordingly, ducking under the blow and coming up with an uppercut. Orochimaru wove around the blow and made an attempt at stabbing Naruto through the eye. It was dodged when the blonde Uzumaki moved his head to the side, letting the hand ruffle his hair. In return the blonde launched his own punch at the Sannin's face, however that was dodged. Naruto's knee came up and blocked Orochimaru's foot when it tried to take him by surprise. With no true blows landed the two jumped back and reassessed each other. The entire sequence of combat had taken less than a minute. In the shinobi world battles were usually fast-paced, where seconds could mean the difference between life and death. So many ninja were used to moving fast in combat. However, even then what the Anbu watching outside witnessed was beyond a simple ninja battle. The speed of the two fighters was of the kind very few could reach, it went beyond Jonin and into the realm of cages. What surprised them the most was that the one battling Orochimaru, S-rank ninja and one of the three Sannin who were said to be on par with any cage, was none other than Uzumaki Naruto, genin of Konoha, dead last of his class, and from his file an all-around screw-up. The image they had in their mind and the image the grinning blonde before them were in such complete contrast with each other that those watching found it hard to believe the battle could be anything more than a very elaborate genjutsu. A few of the younger officers there even tried to dispel an illusion just to make sure they hadn't been caught in one. "Oh man, did you see that?" asked Usagi as he watched the battle. "I could hardly even keep up with them." "Me either. The battle's only just started and it looks like they've kick-started into high gear." This particular comment came from Tori. "I expected this kind of fighting from someone like Orochimaru. But to see Uzumaki fighting like that is unbelievable," Usagi said in an excited voice. "It is most impressive," replied Tenzo, the captain of the Anbu squad. "But then, this is the genin who pranks the Anbu and clans of Konoha as a pastime. There is obviously more to this young man than we thought. Maybe we should offer him a position in the Anbu when this is all over," Usagi suggested. "You mean if he survives," said Tori. However, none were more surprised than Sarutobi Hiruzen. While the battle had just started, the fact that Naruto was more than keeping up with his former student was remarkable. Naruto, who was still just a genin, and one who was supposed to be at the bottom of his class's graduates, was fighting a shinobi that had been hailed as a genius. Even with the recent and mysterious changes the blonde went through, he should not have become this powerful. "What happened to you during that time in the Forest of Death, Naruto-kun?" Inside of the barrier Naruto was grinning like a madman as he dodged and blocked, attacked and counter-attacked. He had never actually had this much fun. This was a fight. This was what he had been waiting for. A battle with a worthy opponent. It didn't matter that Naruto had decided not to use his Yuki so as to make the battle more even in the hopes of gaining a challenge. All that mattered to him was that he had found someone to battle who was on par with him as far as raw skills went. It actually went without saying that Orochimaru was a better fighter. His style was more fluid than Naruto's brawling style, his reflexes were better honed due to the decades of battle he had been in, and he had more tricks up his sleeve than the blonde did. But that was okay with Naruto, it just made this fight more exciting. What Naruto lacked in finesse and experience, he more than made up for in raw potential and physical ability. He may not be using Yuki in this battle, but his natural strength and speed were enough to keep up with the Sannin's cunning mind and deceptive tactics. He may not have experience, but Naruto had always been a genius in battle. Not in the way Hyuga Neji was, with his powerful taijutsu, or Shikamaru with his, thinking 200 moves ahead, strategy. No, what Naruto had was an innovative and creative mind that bordered on the insane. He thought outside the box, he was unpredictable, and to any shinobi who fought more with their mind than their bodies, that was a very frightening thing. "Quickly, let us see if we can't get this barrier down." Hearing the voice Naruto looked out of the corner of his eye, he saw the Hokage and the Anbu on one side of the barrier. He frowned, turning his eyes back to his opponent. "Oi, Oja-san, what are you still doing there standing around like a lemon?" When he was sure he got the Hokage's attention, Naruto continued. "There's a war going on, you know. Why don't you go and help out your ninja?" "What, Naruto, this is not some genin you're fighting," Sarutobi said in an urgent voice. "This is Orochimaru, one of my students. He is one of the greatest traders of the leaf and an S-rank ninja. Even with your new power, you don't stand a chance against him." "Kukuku, you should listen to the old man, Naruto-kun," Orochimaru said with a chortle. "Not that it matters seeing as you're trapped here with me. That barrier won't come down unless I command the Sound 4 to let it down, and that won't be happening for a while yet." Naruto rolled his eyes. "I'm hurt that you would think I'm not up to the task of killing some 2-bit has-been." While Naruto could not see it, he could tell from the stiffening postures of the Anbu that they were all wide-eyed. The fact that Sarutobi looked like he had just shit a brick, and Orochimaru began seething was just a bonus. "I guarantee I'm stronger than you think. Than anything of you can think. Besides, you can't get past that barrier. All you'd be doing is standing there wasting time, when you could be helping turn the tides of battle. So let me have my fun and get going." Sarutobi hesitated. He didn't really want to leave, but Naruto was right. He had been trying to come up with a way to get through the barrier, however he could not think of anything that would work. It was impervious to ninjutsu, and he didn't have enough experience in Fuinjutsu to think of anything that might get rid of the seal. He didn't even think Jiraiya had that kind of talent. Minato might have. Sarutobi was sure he would have been able to find a way to get rid of the barrier. But he was no longer amongst the living, and thus no help. So he had a choice. He could stay here and watch helplessly as his grandson figure fought a man Sarutobi knew was far beyond his power. Or he could leave and enter the battle proper, helping as many shinobi as he could. In the end, the choice was obvious. "I'm sorry, Naruto," Sarutobi said, before turning to his Anbu. "You 3 will stay here and watch the battle. If the barrier goes down, you are to assist Uzumaki-san in fighting Orochimaru." He received 3 highs from his shinobi. Looking at Naruto one last time, Sarutobi left to fight in the battles going on down below. "Maybe now I can fight win peace," Naruto said. He looked at Orochimaru and smirked. "Ready to continue?" Orochimaru chuckled. This kid was just full of surprises. "Kukuku, of course, Naruto-kun, show me what you're made of." Naruto shivered. That just sounded so wrong, on so many levels. The battle within the arena had taken a turn for the worst, against Oto that is. Armed with Naruto's information, Temari and Baki had informed the rest of their ninja the truth about the man that had been sitting in their cage's place. Enraged, Suna ninja turned on Oto, and the battle that had already been going poorly thanks to the battle plan they had laid out being disrupted by a certain blonde genin became that much worse. Kamedachi number jutsu. Temari swung her oversized fan and sent a forced gale of cutting wind pockets towards a group of Oto ninja. While the jutsu was only C-ranked in power, it was strong enough that many of those caught in its grasp would not be fighting any time soon. Just a little ways away from the sandy blonde, the second oldest of her siblings was using his puppets to either attack or herd Oto ninja into her attacks. Kankuro himself hid behind Baki for protection, as her brother wasn't any good at open combat, preferring to rely on his poisons and puppets to get the job done. She looked at the wall behind her, specifically at the still sleeping form of her youngest brother. It was so odd seeing him sleeping and not having Shukaku take over his body. She would have wondered what was happening to him, but considering the situation she was in, she knew that now was not the time for such trivial thoughts. He was safe, and that was all that mattered. Temari looked at several ninja her brother was herding over to her and swung her fan again. Kamedachi number jutsu. Kabuto grimaced as he was sent flying backwards from another powerful blow to the chest by one Maida guy. He was just thankful that with his ability to heal himself he was practically impervious to any and all forms of damage. Otherwise this battle would have been over long ago, and it would not have been he who was the victor. Though just because he couldn't be permanently damaged didn't mean he wasn't going to curse his situation. Thanks to Kakashi as his damnable Sharingan he had been found before he could leave. Now he was not only fighting Maida guy, but also Hatake Kakashi and Midorishi Anko. Needless to say he was having a difficult time just trying to survive. Flipping himself around, Kabuto managed to land on his feet after getting smacked around by Guy. However, as soon as he stopped skidding backwards, Anko shot several snakes from her hands and wrapped them around his body. Even worse for the young medic nin and spy, his arms had been caught by the snakes as well, so he wouldn't be able to use any hand signs. A chirping sound caught his attention and Kabuto was just in time to see a flash of blue lightning from Kakashi's hand as the Chidori was plunged into his chest. There was a puff of smoke and Kabuto's body was soon replaced by a log. The traitorous medical ninja appeared just a little ways away. He gave no witty comeback like he usually might as he tried to escape from the trio of ninja. While he was arrogant, he was also smart. Kabuto knew that this battle was beyond him. Fighting 3 Jonin-level ninja, 2 being a solid A rank and 1 being a mid to high B rank, was beyond anyone aside from those that earned the distinction of S rank. However, he was unable to escape as Maeda Guy had been standing in the back to ensure Kabuto didn't try to do what he was doing right now. The taijutsu specialist was on Kabuto before he knew what hit him. Kabuto winced as he received several hits from Guy. The problem with fighting the taijutsu specialist was that he was just too strong and fast for Kabuto to do anything more than redirect the blows to lessen the damage. Perhaps in a straight-up fight, Kabuto would be able to use trickery and his medial skills, but with 2 other ninja to deal with he had no chance of being capable of doing that. Kabuto ducked and dodged and weaved through the hailstorm of fists and feet that Guy threw at him. A few of the larger man's attacks came close, but none gave the medical ninja more than a grazing wound. The medical ninja's taijutsu style revolved around dodging opponents by predicting their next attack through muscle movement. Because of that, in spite of Guy being better than Kabuto at taijutsu, the white-haired medical ninja was able to keep just a few steps ahead of the taijutsu specialist. However, Konoha ninja often worked as a team, and this battle was no different. He became distracted when Anko launched a dozen snakes at him, and Kabuto ended up receiving another painful blow to the chest. He could feel his rib cage snapping and it took a bit of effort not to scream out in pain. He soared through the air and as he went under Kakashi, the copy ninja began going through several hand seals. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Jutsu. Kakashi breathed out a large fireball that hit Kabuto, who was burnt to a crisp, his body hitting the ground with a meaty thud. However, before anyone could celebrate, the traitorous ninja once again disappeared in a puff of smoke. I can't see him anywhere, Guy said with a frown. He looked at his 2 partners, though recent circumstance left him somewhat reluctant to consider his former rival a partner. Can either of you see him? No, Kakashi said with a sigh as he looked around with his Sharingan. I can't see Kabuto anywhere. It's like he was never here. Damn, Anko pounded a fist into her right hand. I can't believe that bastard managed to get away. He's definitely a slippery one, Maeda Guy said seriously, which was rare for Guy. But come, let us not waste time lamenting over this. There is still a lot more we must do to drive these most unyouthful invaders out of our home. Anko sighed. Right, let's go. The 3 Konoha ninja took off to help everyone else with their battles. None of them saw the figure sinking into the ground. Shinraken, heavenly subjugation of the omnipresent fist. Naruto punched out at Orochimaru, who moved his body to dodge the blow. However, despite being well out of the way of the blonde's fist, the hubby Sanin was still sent sailing backwards with the same amount of force he would have been if he had been hit. Gah, that was like one of Tsunade's punches. Orochimaru gasped as he felt the pain in his body. It felt like someone had compressed the Hokage monument into a small size but left its mass intact and dropped it on his stomach. How did he even hit me? I know I dodged that. Is this another ability of the Rinnegan? Bansho Tenin, heavenly attraction of all creation. Gah, Orochimaru felt as if he had been hooked in the gut as he was pulled forward with enough force that he ended up flying through the air at Jonin-level speeds. When he got within his opponent's reach, Naruto pounded him right in the face with his fist. Shinraken. Once more Orochimaru flew through the air, right before he ended up plowing into the ground. Groaning, he stood back up and looked at his opponent, who seemed to be giving him time to recuperate. That was a very powerful attack, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said. It reminded me of my teammate Tsunade's punches. Tell me, is this another ability of your Rinnegan? Could you stop calling me Naruto-kun? Asked Naruto. Seriously, it's giving me the creeps. I don't swing that way. And second, what makes you think I would tell you anything about my Rinnegan's abilities? Where the fun in that be? Unless, of course, you're willing to even up the odds by telling me every technique you know. Kuku, Orochimaru chuckled, though he looked angered at Naruto denying him information. The blonde smirked. He knew he was getting to the hubby Sanin. The man was not only insanely arrogant, even more than Naruto had been when fighting the Saint Beasts, he was also curious. Especially when it came to Jutsu and Kekkei Genkai. By denying him information, Naruto pissed him off, and that would eventually make him sloppy. It seems you are not as dumb as everyone says you are. Gee, what gave that away? Asked Naruto in a sarcastic tone of voice. The fact that I'm kicking your, or maybe the fact that I beat every single ninja I faced in the Chunin exams. When I was told you were a genius, I thought everyone meant ninja prodigy, not a master of stating the obvious. You are hardly close to beating me, Orochimaru said with a scowl, all traces of playfulness leaving his face. Do not presume that a child like you has any chance of defeating me, someone who has gone farther in his study of ninjutsu than anyone else in the world. Let me show you just how far you are from my level. Orochimaru began going through several hand seals, before slamming his hands into the ground. Kuchios. Edo Tensai Summoning Technique. Resurrection of an Impure World. 3 coffins began raising themselves from the ground, each one with a number on them numbering 1, 2, and 4. Naruto wasn't sure what this was, but he had a feeling this was the technique Orochimaru had needed kin for. He wondered what would happen to the corpse he had put in the one that said 1. Since they apparently needed a living sacrifice for the technique to work. Figuring he would find out, Naruto waited until the 3 coffins were fully raised from the ground. Each one fell back with a loud thud, then the coffins opened up and from coffins 2 and 4, a person stepped out. What? Why isn't the Shodai coming out? Orochimaru looked into the first coffin and was shocked to see one of his shinobi inside. Dead. You. He raged at the blonde. You did this. This is how you found out about my invasion, isn't it? Naruto's eyes didn't even turn to acknowledge the man's words as he looked at the person in front of him. The man in front of him was fairly tall, just a little shorter than Naruto himself, and though his skin was ashen pale Naruto knew it should be a light tan much like his own. He had bright blonde hair that was spiky and had 2 jaw-length bangs framing his face. Bright blue eyes much like the ones Naruto used to have adorned his face. His attire consisted of a standard Konoha nin uniform with 2 bands each on both of his sleeves, a flak jacket and a forehead protector. He was also wearing a haori that was decorated by flames-like motifs on the edges, with the kanji for Yondaime Hokage, 4th Fire Shadow, written vertically down the back, and closed on the front by a thin orange rope. This man was none other than Namikaze Minato. The two stared at each other for what felt like the longest time, but in truth had only been a few seconds. Finally, Minato's mouth opened and the first word he said was, Sochi. Those 2 words caused all the people within hearing distance to look between the 2 blondes in shock. Had they just heard right? Did Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, the Kuroi Senku, the greatest hero of Kana call the Kyuubi Jinchuriki-san? For the Anbu standing outside it was like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water on them. While none had done anything to hurt Naruto, they hadn't done anything to help him either. Some had even turned a blind eye to the boy's plight when he ran into a drunken villager, letting the people take their anger out on the blonde before stepping in to stop it. And now they had just heard that the boy they had ignored and many hated was the son of their greatest hero. It was a bitter pill to swallow and one that was sure to cause an uproar among the people of Konoha. Naruto cracked a smile. What's up, Tsunade? I bet you never thought we'd actually meet, huh? Not really. Minato grimaced, not after what happened with Uchiha Madara. Naruto grinned at his father's surprised expression. Don't be so surprised. I know everything that happened during Ka-san's pregnancy. Well, most of what happened. I know that Madara somehow managed to know that the seal would weaken during childbirth and I know that he was the one who released Kyuubi and made her attack the village. Yes, that's right and, wait, her. The way Minato's eyes bulged as he heard that the fearsome Kyuubi no Yoko, the most powerful of the Biju was in fact, a female. Naruto chuckled, surprised. So am I. I mean, it's not every day that you find out that your mind is being inhabited by a super hot female. When he saw his dad's eyes bug out even more Naruto laughed. That's right, you only saw her fox form, huh? Let me assure you, Tsunade, her human form is exquisite. I don't even know what to say to that. Minato mumbled, the man beside him just looked lost. Said man had white shaggy hair, red eyes and 3 red streaks, 2 under his eyes and 1 on his chin. His outfit consisted of blue armor and a forehead protector which was modeled to resemble a face guard. The outfit underneath his armor had a white fur collar. Outside of his shinobi outfit the man wore a simple blue shirt kimono held closed by a pale yellow sash and pants with mesh armor underneath, completed with a bracelet of sorts on his left hand. I'm not sure what's going on, he said, and Naruto turned to realize he was looking at the Nadaime Hokage, who was looking at him with red eyes. It seems you have quite the story to tell. However, I believe we were summoned here for a reason. That's right, Nadaime-sama, Yondaime-sama, Orochimaru said with a mocking smile as he said Minato's title. You two are here to kill dear Minato's son and help me destroy your home. He had been rather angry about not being able to summon the Shidaime, but learning that Naruto was in fact the son of the man he hated most made his anger disappear. Now he would force the man he hated more than even his own sensei to kill his son. While he had wanted Naruto's body, the hubby Sannin was beginning to think it was too much trouble. He would likely have to kill the boy before he could become a threat. Such a shame. With those pleasant thoughts in his mind, Orochimaru pulled out 2 kunai with several seal tags on them. He made to implant them in the head of the 2 he had summoned. However, before he could a hand grabbed onto his. Looking from the hand the hubby Sannin was just in time to see a hand with a spiraling ball of chakra in it, before it was plowed into his face. Rather than explode in a mass of gore and brains, Orochimaru melted into a pile of mud. "Tch, Suchi Bunshin, mud clone," Minato muttered as he jumped back from the sword that threatened to impale him. He landed over near Naruto, and looked over where Orochimaru was standing with an angry glare on his face. "How are you able to attack me? I revived you. You can't hurt the person who cast this jutsu." Orochimaru screamed, spittle actually coming out of his mouth. Naruto actually snickered at the sight of the famed hubby Sannin losing his cool. Minato just smiled. "You obviously didn't read the fine print, did you, Orochimaru? Had you studied the jutsu in more depth, you would have known that one who has given himself to the Shinigami cannot be used by anyone except Shinigami-sama. When I sacrificed myself to seal Kyuubi into Naruto, the Shinigami claimed my soul and I now work for him. Mere mortal jutsu do not hold power over the one who controls the spirit realm." Orochimaru grit his teeth in anger and slight worry. This was not something he had expected, and it also meant trouble. Minato wasn't considered to be the most powerful shinobi to ever grace the elemental nations without good reason. Even without his Hiraishin no jutsu he was a powerful force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, the hubby Sannin knew he was too far into this now to back down. If he tried to escape it would leave his back exposed, and he had no doubt that Minato would take advantage of such an act. Never mind the fact that his son was capable of holding his own against him. Beside him Tobirama was looking at Minato with newfound respect as he heard that he had sacrificed himself to the Shinigami. That was facing death with true courage. "Fine, I'll just end the technique on you," Orochimaru said, however Minato just laughed. "You can't end the technique anymore. The moment you summoned me to this plane, your ability to control me in any way was lost. That includes canceling the jutsu on me. Face Pedo Douche, you've lost." Naruto grinned at the man. Beside him Minato's sweat dropped at hearing the very Kushina insult. "And the best part is, you only have yourself to blame." Orochimaru snarled, "No more talk." He violently shoved the kunai in Tobirama's head. The Nadaime Hokage straightened, his skin became pink and healthy but his eyes dulled as he fell to the control of the jutsu. "Kill them." Tobirama started off at a slow gait, before speeding into a run. However, before he could get far Naruto held out his hands and said, "Shinra Tensai, heavenly subjugation of the omnipresent god." And the Nadaime Hokage was suddenly smashed by an invisible force and sent sailing backwards. Minato looked at his son with raised eyebrows. "Is that an ability of the Rinnegan?" "Yep." Naruto looked at his dad with a smirk. "Aside from being able to control all 5 elements, I can also control the 6th element, gravity. With my ability over gravity I can attract or repel objects and people. I can even change the gravity of something else and make things float. I haven't found out everything about these eyes yet, unfortunately. But I've learned some interesting techniques." Minato smiled before noticing Tobirama was getting back up. "You'll have to tell me how you got those eyes. But it will need to be later. Right now we've got a battle on our hands. Not going to tell me I'm too young and to leave it to you?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Minato shook his head and smiled. "From what I've seen since I got here, you were likely doing remarkably well. Especially since he summoned us to battle. Besides, you're my son. I have faith in you." "Good thing too." Naruto chuckled as he turned towards the incoming cage. "There is no way I'm going to be left out of the fun." "Hey, you're just like Kushi-chan," Minato said right as Tobirama attacked them. The Yondaime Hokage ducked under the punch and sent nearly 10 of his own in quick succession. Too fast for any except Naruto himself to see. He ended his attack with an uppercut that caught the other revived cage flat-footed, sending the man sailing. Naruto nodded in approval. "Not bad, old man, it looks like you've got this battle covered. In which case I'm going to go play with a certain snake." "Sure, just leave this to me," Minato said as Tobirama created a giant wall of water, which came towards Minato. Said man went through several hand seals in quick succession, his fingers blurring. Doden. Doryuheiki Earth Release, Earth-style wall. Shinraken. Orochimaru was once again blown back as he was smashed with Naruto's gravity punch. He had actually been hoping to make his escape once the pair of blondes were busy with the Nadaime. However, life and karma seemed to have other plans for the hubby Sannin as Minato and Naruto decided to split up so they could have a pair of one-on-one fights. Now Orochimaru had to contend with the blonde he had been fighting previously, and things were not looking good. Tsunade Taijushu, many hidden shadow snake hands. Orochimaru shot several snakes out of his sleeves, all of them heading for Naruto in an attempt to harm the blonde in some way. Naruto planted his hands on the ground and said, "Shinra Tensai, Genshukusha, heavenly subjugation of the omnipresent god, gravity well." The ground underneath the snakes burst open and they were all hit by an invisible force, getting sent high into the air. With the aim of his snakes off course, Orochimaru was left vulnerable, and Naruto came in and smashed his fist into the Sanin's gut. Orochimaru melted into mud and Naruto jumped back just as the man burst from the ground with a snake in his mouth, which was holding a sword in its mouth. The Sanin pulled the sword free and the snake went back down the man's throat. That is so gross, Naruto shuddered, but he still pulled his katana and wakizashi free. The blades of the swords, much like their general look, were both of opposites. The katana, which was called Kitise, Fox's Cry, had a blade of pure white, and it seemed to glow with a hidden power. The wakizashi went by the name Katunari, Fox's Howl, and held a blade that was pitch black. He held Kitise in front of him with a standard one-handed grip, and Katunari behind him in a reverse grip as he prepared to use them in their first real battle. Orochimaru came in fast and began attacking Naruto, using a combination of jabs and slices in his attempt to get through the blonde's guard. However, Naruto was more than up to the task of defending against the Sanin's attacks. Using Katunari, the blonde Uzumaki blocked all attacks from the Kusanagi, grass-cutter blade, surprising Orochimaru that his sword did not cut right through it. The Kusanagi was one of the most powerful swords in the world, and very few weapons save those used by the Kurashinobi Katana Nananshu were capable of withstanding it. With Kitise, Naruto made his own attempts at vivisecting his opponent. Orochimaru was forced to swerve around the katana so as not to get cut in half. The two broke apart after Orochimaru came in with a heavy swing from above, and Naruto blocked by bringing his blades into an X-guard. Deciding enough was enough, Naruto moved in to finish off his opponent. He came in fast and hard, and began using both blades to attack Orochimaru. Katunari he used for quick jabs and to get into Orochimaru's guard, or knock his blade out of the way. Kitise was used for power strikes and swings aimed at taking off limbs. It was during one of the moments where Katunari had knocked the Kusanagi away that Naruto managed to slice straight through Orochimaru's midsection, cutting the man in half. However, much to Naruto's shock and disgust, several snakes burst from two severed body parts and pulled the man back together. Growling in frustration, Naruto began attacking again, this time even more viciously than before. The hubby Sanin found himself being hard-pressed to defend himself against the blonde's powerful onslaught. While he had been careful not to get cut in half again, he began receiving several cuts along his arms and torso. He had to hold in a wince each time he got cut, as each wound he received felt like it either burned him, or sucked out his life essence, depending on the sword that caused the wound. Those are some rather interesting swords, Orochimaru commented as they jumped away from each other again. I'm rather curious to know where you got them. And once again, I'm rather curious to know why you think I'm going to tell you, said Naruto. Face it, unlike most shinobi, I actually hold to the common rule that deception and misdirection is a shinobi's bread and butter. I'm not going to tell you anything unless it would benefit me in some way. And telling you of the origins of my sword doesn't do that. Fine, Orochimaru said through grit teeth. This brat was getting on the last of his nerves, he had ruined everything the Sanin had worked for. Then you shall die and I'll just take them off of your corpse. Naruto just smiled. Oh, I think not, Orochimaru. Gah. Orochimaru's eyes widened as he felt a sword pierce through his chest. Looking down, he saw the black blade of Katunari sticking out. He looked up just in time to see the Naruto in front of him disappear in a puff of smoke, then turned around to see cold blue Rinnegan eyes staring at him from behind. When did you switch yourself out with a Kage Bunshin? When I cut you in half, replied Naruto. And now that I've got the real you, you're finished. This blade, Katunari, has a very unique ability. It can suck out the soul of anyone it stabs. A rather impressive ability if I do say so myself. That was why I felt so weak when it cut me, Orochimaru said with realization. Yep, each time it cut you it took a little piece of your soul, weakening you constantly. Unlike chakra, you cannot replace your soul, and it seems yours is rather small. Naruto wasn't sure why that was, but in the end it didn't matter. Goodbye, Pito Douche. No, I am Orochimaru of the Sanin. Orochimaru screamed. Even as his skin began to age, wrinkles began forming and his face became sunken in. I am invincible, immortal, I can't be. The man's screaming stopped as his body turned into a pile of ash. Naruto smiled as he blew away the dust with his Shinra Tensei. He looked over to see his father had just finished sealing up Tobirama. Deciding that his father had things well in hand, Naruto turned to the first person he saw keeping up the barrier. A frightened-looking girl with long, untamed, red hair. She also wore a black hat with bandages on the sides. You and your comrades will drop this barrier and surrender yourselves, Naruto said, his voice colder than a glacier, making the girl shiver. Any attempts at escape will end in your death, however if you surrender I promise to show you mercy and will allow you to live. Oh shit, this guy just fucking beat that cocksucker, Orochimaru, like it was nothing, and now he's staring at me, were the first thoughts of the redhead. However, the boy's words penetrated her mind, and her sense of self-preservation kicked in. She immediately dropped the barrier, and knowing the blonde could and most likely would make good on his threat, decided to stay where she was. The three others were not so smart. They tried to escape, however, between the now revived Yondaime and the three Anbu, none escaped and they were all captured. What should we do them, Yondaime-sama? Asked Tenzo, deferring to the man who had once been a cage. It was Naruto that answered. Take those three to Ibiki, get him to make them cough up the locations of everything they know on Orochimaru. His bases, enemy numbers, everything. When you're done, kill them. The three Anbu looked startled at being ordered by a kid, but seeing how he had just killed Orochimaru, none said anything. Though Tenzo did look at the Yondaime, who merely nodded. He nodded back and turned back to Naruto and asked, what about her? She has agreed to come quietly, so she will be escorted to POW. I myself will talk with her when the battle for Konoha has ended, Naruto said. He looked at one of the Anbu. You will escort her, and know this, she is not to be harmed since she has come willingly. If I find that one hair on her head has been hurt, I will be coming after you. The Anbu, Tori, gulped in fear, knowing that this kid could follow up on that threat. The girl, however, looked shocked at someone she just met protecting her. However, just as Tori was about to tell the girl to get moving, the redhead hissed in pain and was forced to her knees, while her hands flew to her neck. What the fuck? She shouted. Dear fucking Kami, this hurts like a mother bitch. Shit. Naruto and Minato ignored the girl's profanity as they rushed over to her and pried the girl's hands away from her neck. That's Orochimaru's Juinjutsu, cursed seal, said Naruto with a frown. It looks like it's sizzling. The two watched as the seal cracked and hissed, slowly disappearing from the girl's skin. Within seconds the seal was gone, leaving a rather nasty-looking scar. Check the other three, see if their Juinjutsu seals are still there. Naruto ordered the Anbu. He looked at the redhead. Are you alright? What the fuck do you think? Of course I'm not alright, shithead. She screamed at him. Right, new plan then, Naruto muttered before giving out his orders. Tori, get this girl to the hospital. Hi, the man shouted, almost out of reflex due to the commanding tone in his voice. Naruto pulled the girl up and handed her off to the bird-masked Anbu. He turned to his father when the man began jumping off. Are you ready? Minato smiled at his son, and there was a look of pride on his face. Of course, shall we kick these foreign ninja out of our home? I think you know the answer to that. Doden. Doryuden, Earth Release, Earth Dragon Bullet. Kaden. Enden, Fire Release, Flame Bullet. A mound of mud rose up from the ground, shifting and morphing to take on the shape of a dragon head. The creature opened its mouth and several tons of mud were blasted out, sweeping up many of the Odo ninja in front of Sarutobi away. A few more hand seals later and Sarutobi blew a stream of fire out of his mouth, which connected with the earth and lit the mud into a blaze. Soon, the screams of Odo ninja dying were heard as they were burned to a crisp under the combined assault of the Sandame's collaboration jutsu. Going through more hand seals, the aging Hokage slammed his palms on the ground and shouted, Kuchio's number jutsu, Enku Enma, summoning technique, Monkey King Enma. There was a large puff of smoke, which soon cleared to reveal a large monkey. To be more specific, it was an ape. Enma's body was covered by white fur which protruded from his sleeves and pants. He had long white hair and sideburns as well as a goatee. His tail was also white. He was wearing a black suit with mesh armor underneath, over which he wore a sleeveless kimono shirt with white trimmings and markings reminiscent of tiger stripes on it, held closed by a sash. Enma also had on a Konoha forehead protector. Enma, I would like your help in ridding Konoha of these invaders. Sarutobi said. Very well, I shall aid you in this, Sarutobi, Enma said as the two began to work together. Sarutobi and Enma began moving into the area which was thickest with enemy ninja, fighting together to overpower any shinobi they could get their hands on. While they were battling, however, they both received the shock of their lives as Uzumaki Naruto appeared to fight with them. And he was with none other than Namikaze Minato. Minato-kun, Sarutobi whispered in shock as the pair of blondes crashed into the battle with all the subtlety of a battering ram. The father and son duo took to pulverizing the Odo ninja with a combination of finesse and brute force, Minato being the finesse and Naruto just pounding them into the dirt until they died, to defeat any who stood before them. Minato turned to look at the aging Sandame and grinned. Hey Sarutobi-san, can't talk now, me and my son have to help with the invasion. The aging Hokage merely nodded mutely, unable to even think much less try and comprehend the fact that Minato was standing before him, alive and well. What is going on here? Asked Enma as he smashed his fist into an Odo Kunoichi's face. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Minato die sealing the Kyuubi? Yes, He did. Sarutobi snapped himself out of his funk and began fighting again. He couldn't afford to get distracted. However, Orochimaru may have used that jutsu to bring Minato back to life. Though, if he did, I don't know why he's fighting first and not doing Orochimaru's bidding. I suppose in the end it doesn't matter, said Enma. Let us finish this, we can get our answers later. Sarutobi gave an absent nod as he got back to work. The appearance of Namikaze Minato fighting alongside Uzumaki Naruto sent shockwaves through the remaining Konoha shinobi. None could believe that their hero had returned and was battling with their foes like he had never left. Many of Konoha figured that the Yondaime had somehow managed to come back to life, or never died to begin with and had just been waiting for the right time to come out of hiding. The one other thing that everyone noticed and were shocked about, was the fact that the Yondaime Hokage was fighting alongside Naruto. A fact which confused many of the ninja forces. Despite their confusion, everyone rallied behind the two powerful shinobi. With renewed strength, determination and moral, Konoha drove off the invading Odo forces alongside the Suna ninja that had turned on their supposed allies. With the loss of their leader, the appearance of Naruto and the reappearance of the Yondaime Hokage, the ninja of Odo began to lose heart. Many had attempted to retreat, only to be cut down by the father and son duo who used their immense speed and power to blindside the Odo ninja. Naruto, wielding his Rinnegan, had used his control over gravity to keep the Odo forces from running away, while Minato sped into their ranks and decimated them. Even though he did not have any Hiraishin Kunai on him and was thus incapable of using his signature technique, was still faster than anyone had any right to be. It wasn't long before the Odo forces had either been killed or surrendered. Phew, Naruto said as he wiped some sweat from his brow. Man, this has been quite a day. First I fight the Hyuga prodigy, then the Shukaku Jinchuriki, next was Orochimaru, and now I just helped drive an invading force out of Konoha. An all-around good day. Minato chuckled at his son's nonchalance. And now we'll be able to get some well-deserved rest, and you can tell me about how your life has been. The older blonde didn't miss the wince his son did, and a frown marred his face. Before he could ask about it, another voice shouted his name. Minato, Minato. Turning, the two blondes watched as Jiraiya jumped down from the roof and stopped in front of the two of them. Minato blinked. Jiraiya-sensei. When I heard you were alive I didn't believe it. I almost still don't believe. The white-haired man said. He looked at Minato suspiciously. How are you alive? I'll explain later, sensei, Minato said. For now, let's just say Orochimaru is an idiot and leave it at that. Wait, Naruto said, catching the attention of the two men. This is Jiraiya, the Jiraiya. Jiraiya grinned at the younger blonde. Yes, that is right, it is I, the great Jiraiya saw. Ah. Minato, Hiruzen and the many shinobi who were present winced in sympathy as Naruto kicked the Gamma Sannin in the balls, hard. A few even reflexively cupped their nads, as if feeling the pain merely by seeing Jiraiya's getting damaged. What was that for? Squeaked out Jiraiya, his voice sounding very much like a Unik. That, Naruto said with a grim smile. That was for not taking care of me, or even coming to visit me, Kyofu. Jiraiya paled, then went even paler as he saw Minato's look darken. If they did not look so different, many would have assumed Jiraiya was Orochimaru due to how pale he was. Thankfully for Jiraiya, Sarutobi herded the attention away from his doomed student. Minato, I have to ask, how is it that you are here? I saw your body after defeating the Kyuubi. The Sandaime paused, looking over at Naruto. What? Naruto said with a shrug. I already know my parents were the Yondaime and Uzumaki Kushina. Why you knew? Sarutobi stuttered. Many of the ninja forces that were near enough to hear began whispering. Seeing the look on Naruto's face, the Sandaime asked, for how long? Since the forest of death where I went through my transformation, Naruto replied carefully. Why didn't you say anything? Asked Sarutobi. Naruto shrugged. Why didn't you? The aging Hokage winced at the dull tone in the boy's voice. He had honestly hoped it would be someone else's responsibility to inform Naruto of his parents. That the blonde already knew, and didn't let Sarutobi know that he knew, meant he no longer trust the Sandaime enough to talk to him. Naruto, save your platitudes for someone who needs them, Naruto interrupted, though his words sounded harsh his tone was not. It was the kind of voice someone used when they had already accepted what had happened to them and moved on. What's done is done, and while I don't like you keeping my heritage from me, especially since you always told me you didn't know, I understand why you did it. It's in the past, and that is where it shall stay. I would rather not play. Whose fault is it, with you? Let's just focus on the now, K. Very well, Sarutobi said, relieved and happy to see Naruto did not seem to hold a grudge against him. The Hokage may have lost his trust, but at least the young blonde was willing to forgive his transgressions. Why don't we discuss everything in my office? I have many questions, and I am sure you do as well, Minato. Hi, that's true. I have a lot I want to ask you, and a lot I need to tell you, Minato said. As Naruto is integral to this discussion, and deserves to hear everything we say, he will be coming with us. I understand, Sarutobi said. He looked down at Jiraiya who was still curled up on the ground holding his junk. Jiraiya, get off the ground. I want you to be at this meeting. Right, Jiraiya said, standing as if nothing had happened and he was perfectly fine. Though Naruto noticed with a satisfied smirk that the man was walking a little bow-legged. The four ninja began making their way through the crowd, heading towards the Hokage Tower, where a long discussion awaited them. Now then, Sarutobi said as he, Naruto, Minato and Jiraiya all sat down in the Hokage's office. While it is truly great to see you again, Minato, I have to ask. How is it that you are alive? Minato leaned back against his seat, a small smile on his face, the kind he had when he had a secret that he found amusing. I'll tell you, but I don't want any interruptions. Okay. When the two older ninja who had not been present for his rebirth both agreed, Minato nodded and continued. Orochimaru revived me via the Edo Tensei. He revived not only me, but the Nadaime Hokage as well. A frown marred the blonde's face. He had also tried summoning the Shodai, but for some reason it didn't work and Shadaime-sama wasn't revived. That would be my fault, Naruto admitted, causing all eyes to turn on him. I was on my way back to Konoha when I ran into a hidden outpost with Oto ninja guarding it. I thought it was strange and decided to investigate. What I found, Naruto growled, and for a moment everyone in the room leaned back as killing intent leaked out of the blonde. It left a second later as Naruto visibly calmed down. I found one of the 3 Oto genin that had been in the Chunin exams, one Tsuchikin. The Oto Jonin had raped her, multiple times if my guess is correct. I killed most of the Jonin except one, and interrogated him. That was how you knew of the invasion, Sarutobi said in realization. Naruto nodded. Correct. Anyways, after I had pulled every iota of knowledge from the man's mind, I killed him and stuffed his corpse into the coffin. Which is why the technique didn't work, Minato said with a nod. Edo Tensei requires a living sacrifice to work. Nadaime-sama originally created the jutsu to revive ninja who had died while delivering important information. I'm guessing that once he finished it, he ended up deciding to go further than he had first wanted. In any case, he revived myself and Nadaime-sama to help him kill Naruto and destroy Konoha. Now the reason I didn't end up becoming Orochimaru's puppet is quite simple. I gave my life to Koenma-sama. Koenma who? Asked Naruto. Koenma-sama's the guy in charge of the spirit world. At the blank looks he was getting from everyone else in the room he elaborated. That's where people go when they die. The 3 others gained a look of understanding and he continued. So basically he's the one calling all the shots. When Orochimaru tried to revive me, he felt this was the perfect opportunity to get a presence here in the elemental nations. What do you mean a presence? Asked Naruto. Minato paused and gained a thoughtful look, as if trying to decide how best to explain the situation. I mean he wanted someone who works for him to be stationed in the elemental nations. It's not known to us, but when the ninja world started using chakra it created a barrier between us and the spirit world. As you know, chakra is comprised of a combination of spiritual energy and physical energy. Well, the physical energy is actually blocking Koenma's influence here, and because there are so many chakra users it's actually created a literal barrier around the elemental nations that keep his agents from getting in. And that's where you come in, said Naruto with a frown. He made use of Orochimaru's jutsu to bring you back to life to work for him because he had no one working in the elemental nations for him. Well, there was one person who used to, Minato said. I don't know much, but I heard that there was a woman named Botan who was here in the elemental nations that helped Koenma-sama ferry the souls of the dead across the River of Styx. However, she disappeared around 18 years ago and no one's even heard from her since. I'm still not really sure I understand, Jiraiya said, scratching the back of his head as a confused expression crossed his face. You're telling me you're working for the guy in charge of this spirit world place, and that he made use of Orochimaru's stupidity to bring you back to life. I know, it doesn't seem possible, Minato said, understanding his sensei's skepticism that there was someone who had that kind of power over life and death. There was also another reason he let me come back. I happen to be one of his best workers, and having sacrificed myself to save my village in my past life he respected me. And I guess he felt bad that I never even got to spend time with my son before dying. There were a few moments of silence at that, before Minato continued. So he gave me my life back, or at least some of it. I get to live for however long the person who was sacrificed to bring me to life had already lived for, and hopefully in that time I'll be able to establish a connection between the elemental nations and the spirit world. If Kin was one of the sacrifices then logic would dictate that the other was her teammate, Zaku, Naruto said. He was 14, I think. Minato nodded at his son's statement. Now then, you all know how I'm here. There are some things I need to tell you. Minato's demeanor became much more serious. Recognizing the look, both Sarutobi and Jiraiya followed suit. Now Naruto already knows this, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to let you two in on this. On what? Asked Sarutobi. On the truth, Minato answered grimly. The truth of what happened the night of Naruto's birth and the Kyuubi attack. He looked at the two older ninja, seeing that they were both serious and apprehensive. It wasn't surprising, they must have wondered for years about that night. Wondered how the Kyuubi could escape when he was keeping a watch on the seal. It probably plagued them for a long time. I suppose we should start with a bit of background history, just to give us some context, Minato said. Everyone here knows how the Shodai-sama's wife, Mito-sama, turned herself into the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi during Hashirama-sama's battle with Madara at the Valley of the End. Mito-sama was from the Uzumaki clan of Uzu no Kuni, land of whirlpools, and Uzushiogakure, village hidden among eddies. Due to their special chakra, the people of the Uzushio were blessed with naturally long lives, to the point it became known as the village of longevity. Also, the members of the Uzumaki clan were unparalleled masters of the art of fuinjutsu. So, using her skills, Mito-sama sealed the fox spirit away, becoming the first Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Later, as she was nearing the end of her life, Naruto's Ka-san, Uzumaki Kushina, was brought to Konoha so she could become the new Jinchuriki. I don't really the reason she was chose for this, just that she was. I didn't find out about this until we started dating. We had actually met in the academy at first, and to be honest, your mom didn't like me. Minato smiled at his son's confused look. She thought I was flaky, even called me girly. Naruto chuckled as his father continued. She was actually a very hot-headed girl, and a tomboy to boot. She would always beat on the other kids that would pick on her for her red hair. They usually called her Tomato. Because of those two facts, your mom was given the nickname Shishio no Habanero, red hot-blooded habanero. So anyways, one day, she was kidnapped by Kumogakure because your mom was the last person to manifest the Uzumaki clan's Kekkei Genkei. They could produce chakra chains that could restrain the Biju much like Shodai-sama's Mokuden Jutsu. I think that's probably why she was chosen to be the Jinchuriki. She managed to leave a trail using her hair, and I was able to track down the two Chunin who had captured her, and saved her. We started dating shortly after that. However, the Third Great War began a year later, so we didn't get to see each other too much. It lasted a good number of years, and during that time I trained Kakashi, Rin, and Obito and developed both my Hiraishin no Jutsu and the Rasengan. Once the war ended, me and your mom married and you came along soon after. Minato closed his eyes and it looked like he was struggling to say what he needed to say. Now, I suppose I've stalled long enough. It was only a few years after Kushina and I got married that she got pregnant. As you can imagine, we were pretty happy. Jiraiya snorted. Pretty happy. Kid, the first time you found out Kushina was pregnant you ran out of the room screaming, "My wife is pregnant." Like an idiot. Minato blushed. Actually, the first time I heard Kushina was pregnant I sort of fainted. Silence. Pure silence reigned in the room before Naruto began laughing. Are you serious? Said Naruto, guffawing loudly. The great Yondaime Hokage, most feared ninja in the elemental nations, can't handle learning his wife is pregnant. Minato blushed even more. Well, I was surprised. He coughed into his hand several times as he tried to get back on track. Anyways, we were happy and we made all these plans for your room and what we would name you. You know, we named you after he character in Jiraiya's book. You mean his first book, said Naruto. Excuse me, his first book. Arrow Senin over there has more than one book out. Naruto grinned when he heard a shout of disrespectful brats from Jiraiya and continued. Nowadays he writes porn novels. Minato really didn't know what to say to that. It was more or less what he expected of his sensei. The man had tried to peek on him and Kushina having after all. He decided to just continue with his story. However, both of us were worried as well. There is only one point that the seal that binds the Kyuubi is the weakest. That is during childbirth. All three of you know this. The energy used to power the seal is diverted to help the baby grow. The seal weakens in direct proportion, and a full-term pregnancy is a whole 10 months, and that night, someone attacked. I don't know how he knew, but he knew the exact moment that the seal was at weakest, so, it was October 10th, just over 13 years ago. Flashback. A 10-month pregnant Namikaze Kushina was sitting at her dining room table with her husband Minato leaning forward, one hand on the back of her chair, and the other on the tabletop. Across from them sat the Sandaime Hokage and his wife. Minato stood as he spoke. I'll be there for the birth, we have to take care of the seal and everything. I'll get everything prepared beforehand. This is what we did for your predecessor, Mito-sama, as well. Sarutobi spoke as he held his pipe in his hand. The seal nearly failed when she gave birth. I'm afraid we'll need to prepare for the worst. We'll set up a place outside the village and erect a barrier to protect it. Only Minato, my wife Bawako, and Taji from the Anbu will be inside. This must be kept top secret. Of course there will be reinforcements outside, Anbu under my direct command. I'll tell yous where the place is, so get your things ready. Yes, thank you both, Kushina responded, looking a little bit nervous. Sarutobi Bawako and Namikaze Kushina were making their way out of the village when they ended up running into one of Kushina's lifelong friends, Uchiha Makoto. As Kushina stopped to say hi, she noticed the baby in the other woman's arms. Didn't you have a girl? Kushina asked with surprise evident in her voice. Makoto gave her long-time friend a smile, but shook her head. Nope, another boy. Well, what's his name, Makoto? Kushina pressed. Sasuke, Makoto answered. There was a proud smile on her face as she looked down at her sleeping son. The name struck a chord with the elder woman of the trio, and Bawako spoke up. Ah, the same name as the Sandame's father. Yes, I'm sure he'll become a fine shinobi, Makoto agreed. Then she looked back up at her red-haired friend and grinned as she continued. You're almost due, aren't you, Kushina? You should pick out a name before it's too late. Kushina smiled brightly as a hand raised up to her chest's level in a sign of thoughtful excitement. We've got one, Naruto. He and Sasuke-kun will be in the same grade. I hope they become friends. A look of fear and nervousness seemed to clash down around the expecting mother as she leaned forward and whispered with her hands around her mouth, as if asking was taboo. By the way, does it hurt? Like, bad. Makoto chuckled. Well, even you're afraid of something. I'll be. By this time, Bawako had had enough and dragged Kushina away by the wrist. Come on already. Oh, sorry. Kushina apologized, waving back at the Uchiha clan's matriarch. Ya-ne, Makoto responded, waving farewell to the redhead. Remember, Bawako chastised after they were far enough away, we need to keep your birth classified. Try not to talk to anyone while we're on the move, even your friends. Right, sorry about that, Kushina acknowledged with a nervous hand rubbing her head. The fact that we're leaving the village is classified as well. Bawako snapped as she turned to face Kushina. Don't go screaming your head off, even when the contractions start. Right. The Anbu guard standing outside a sealed cave heard. Oh god, it hurrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr labor pains. Minato was looking rather harried as he stared at his wife in blatant worry. I've never heard Kushina in so much pain. Are you sure she's alright? She's fine. Just keep your eyes on the seal. Bawako snapped at her husband's successor. But, good lord, you're the Yondaime Hokage. Don't panic, she continued to yell at him. This is why women have babies, you men can't handle the pain. Minato gulped as he felt the seal on his wife's abdomen pulse with energy, signaling that the Kyuubi was trying to break free. You. Kushina moaned as another powerful contraction hit her. It's so strong, was the only thought that ran through her husband's mind as he used his chakra to strengthen the seal. I can feel the fox trying to break out. Hang in there Kushina, hang in there Naruto, he muttered as he continued to fight back the fox. Kushina's moan as she felt Naruto trying to exit her womb racked her body and her eyes clenched shut in agony. The head's out, almost there, Kushina, Bawako cheered as she helped the baby from his mother's birth canal. Taji, the attending medic also provided encouragement. Keep going, Kushina-san. Then, both Minato and Kushina felt the fox trying to break free once more, but Minato surged his chakra from his hand and into the seal with a cry, Naruto, get out here. And Kyuubi, you stay right where you are. Kushina whined as she gave one final push, her son finally free of his mother's uterus. Cries from the infant filled the cave-turned hospital room and Bawako ordered Taji to get some hot water. He snapped to and rushed to the table where the basin waited. It's okay, Minato muttered in shock while Kushina panted, trying to rest her labored body. The baby Naruto continued to cry as he was washed clean of his mother's bodily fluids and Bawako announced with joy, congratulations, it's a healthy baby boy. Ha ha ha, Minato wiped his eyes from their tears of joy, look at me, I'm a father. Bawako handled the blanketed Naruto and carried him up next to his mother's head as he continued to cry. Kushina's own tear-laced eyes turned to happiness as she leveled her gaze on her child. Naruto, I finally get to meet you. She would have continued, but Naruto was taken by Bawako to be cared for as Minato spoke. Okay Kushina. I know you're exhausted from the birth, but we've got to get the Kyuubi completely sealed. She huffed. Right, just as he was about to stabilize the seal, two unmistakable cries of people dying ripped through their ears. Bawako-sama, Taji, Minato roared, His attention was grabbed by a new person who had somehow bypassed the guards and the barrier, wearing a hooded black cloak and an orange mask with black stripes and a single eye hole where the right eye should be. He was holding the baby in his arm, one arm prepared to strike Naruto, Yondaime Hokage, Minato. Back away from the Jinchuriki or your son dies at the ripe age of 1 minute. Minato's eyes narrowed as two thoughts ran through his mind. How did he break through the barrier? Who the hell is this guy? The blonde Hokage was about to move to attempt to rescue his newborn son when Kushina moaned as the Kyuubi began to push for its freedom from the seal on her exposed stomach. Kushina, he cried. The seal's not done. The masked assailant produced a kunai in his left hand and threatened the Hokage once more. Back away from the Jinchuriki, or don't you care if your son dies? Hold it, Jay, just calm down. Minato pleaded, raising his hand up in a reaching gesture as Kushina experienced another wave of pain. Then, to Minato's much growing fear, the man threw Naruto into the air. You should take your own advice, Minato. I'm perfectly calm, the man berated. Naruto, Kushina cried while her husband's gaze turned absolutely murderous as the wailing newborn and the man drew the kunai down in preparation for an upwards thrust. The next moment, Minato had Naruto in his arms as he rested his feet against the wall behind his attacker. You live up to the Kuroi Senku moniker, but what now? The man quipped with a backwards glance. Minato glanced down, seeing smoke flow up from the bottom of the baby blanket, and he recognized the flow as that of multiple paper bombs. A quick movement of his hands later and Minato separated the child from the impending explosion. Minato, Naruto, Kushina cried when she noticed the man in her life and her newborn son disappear. The house went up in fire and smoke as it exploded, and Minato, using his body to protect his and his wife's baby, was thrown away from the blast. Thank Kami, you're not hurt. Minato breathed a sigh of relief as he caught his breath while sitting on the ground, cradling the shrieking infant who obviously did not like all the jostling. Ow! Minato winced as he finally registered the pain of a small piece of wood that had embedded itself in his lower right shin, through his pants and wrappings. He plucked the wood out and his mind was already trying to figure out why they had been attacked. He's after Kushina. He forced me to use my Hiraishin no Jutsu to separate us. Gotta hurry. He used his Hiraishin once more to get Naruto to another house. He then quickly placed Naruto in the bed-sized crib and wrapped a blanket around him. You'll be safe here, he mentioned, although he may have been trying to reassure himself. You'll wait here on your own for a bit, Naruto. I've gotta go save your mom before it's too late. Kushina was strung up with chains binding her wrists that were tethered to several giant boulders jutting up from a mountain lake. Kanji were drawn around 4 vertical pieces of stone and along the chains, forming a seal, as the seal on Kushina gullet spread so that it began to manifest itself on the lower portion of her face. In her weakened condition, she was forced to kneel on another stone as the cloaked man stood before her and she pried for information. What are you after? I came to rip the Kyuubi from your stomach and use it to crush Konoha, the man answered. What? Minato's teleportation jutsu use a special marking that lets him instantly move from one marking to the next, the man continued. I see he's incorporated it into the design of your seal. The man's head lifted and in the eyelet of his mask, a fully mature, 3-tomo Sharingan was revealed. Also he would always be there to protect you, but I managed to get away from him. And the seal has been greatly weakened from the birth. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this moment? Realization began to dawn on the new mother and her eyes locked with the Sharingan as it peered into her, allowing the man to enter the seal's inner construct where the Kyuubi was bound by chains to a large ball with each of its tails staked into it as well, along with its torso and all 4 paws. It tried to fight off its assailant's genjutsu, but the Sharingan prevailed and its slitted eyes shone with the Sharingan, the indicator that the man's control was a success. The chains began to melt and the stakes disappeared, allowing the fox's chakra to manifest as a chakra cloak around Kushina, who screamed in agony when the fox began to emerge from the seal. Her captor brought his right up in a hand seal and uttered his first command to his new beast, come forth, Kyuubi no Yoko. And with a roar that shook the heavens, the full form of the beast emerged from its host. Below, the man turned from Kushina who had collapsed now that the chains were no longer holding her up and he commanded once more, we head for Konohagakure no Sato. Stop, a severely weakened Kushina squeaked out. The man did stop and turned back in slow surprise. The Uzumaki clan is really something special. Even wrenching a biju from your body didn't kill you right away. The fox above growled and the man spoke once more, mentally commanding the monstrous fox to smash the woman. It's only fitting for the Kyuubi to kill its former Jinchuriki. And just like that, the fox smashed its paw down where Kushina was laying, sprawled across the rock, unable to move, and upon contact, the section of ground exploded from the sheer amount of power exuded from said biju. As the dust settled, Minato was crouching on top of a large tree, cradling his wife against himself. A small glimmer of hope, their enemy scoffed. But it's too late. Minato, Kushina huffed and struggled to speak. Is Naruto okay? The Yondaime smiled down at her. Yes, he's fine. I hid him somewhere safe. Oh, thank Kami, Kushina sighed, happy as any mother would be when knowing that their child was safe from harm. Minato, stop him, stop the Kyuubi, they're headed for the village. An unhappy Minato sighed as Kushina's eyes closed from exhaustion and he vanished with her. The man who had attacked merely looked on and spoke for no reason than to hear himself speak, gone again, no matter, on to Konoha. The couple arrived via the Hiraishin and Kushina asked her spouse, why? Never mind why, stay with Naruto, her husband answered while he placed her beside their baby. Her eyes cracked open slowly and lay on her finally sleeping son. Naruto, she cried as she wrapped an arm around him as he lay beneath the blanket. She continued to cry as she pulled him close and the side of his head rested against her own. Minato, thank you, she managed to get out as the man clenched his fists and stomped the floor in anger. I'll be back before you know it, he proclaimed while slipping his signature Hokage Haori over his Junin vest. A 5-year-old Uchiha Itachi was sitting on the porch that ran along the perimeter of the courtyard that the main family's dining room looked out upon. In his arms was his baby brother, Sasuke, who was sleeping rather peacefully when a something washed over the older son of Makoto. What's this awful feeling? He muttered as he looked up into the night sky. NMMMMM. The infant began to squirm before crying out, forcing his older brother to try and rock him back to sleep with reassuring words. What an awful feeling, Itachi thought again. Why did Ka-chan and Tu-san have to go out now? He then redirected his attention back to his brother once more. Don't cry, Sasuke. Your Ni-san is here to protect you, no matter what happens. Many of the village's ninja were beginning to unwind for the day and were saying their farewells to their friends for the night. Two in particular though, had just met up with one another and the vastly more eccentric was demanding a challenge from his eternal rival. Why don't we just go with rock paper scissors today? Kakashi asked as he walked down the street with his hands in his pockets. Not again, I want a more hot-blooded contest. Guy protested with a very childlike attitude. And you call yourself my rival? Ignoring him, Kakashi examined his left hand as it gained a nervous tremor. Hey Guy, do you sense something off? Like there's an awful chill in the air. Why do you have to act like this? We'll only be young once. Guy continued with his rants on the youthfulness of youth. Minato's predecessor was reading from a report while smoking on his pipe when he too felt the same ominous feeling that Kakashi and Itachi were both experiencing. He looked out his window while exhaling a stream of smoke. It couldn't be, he thought. Unfortunately, it was, because a moment later, the same man who had attacked the Yondaime and his family, and unleashed the Kyuubi, materialized just inside the village's walls and used a summoning jutsu. Attack, Kyuubi no Yoko. The man commanded, and the Kyuubi flared its yuki while smashing buildings causing many people to fly away from the sheer power it unleashed. Some of the villagers however, were not caught in the initial assault and looked up in pure, unadulterated fear. Sandame-sama, one of the Anbu appeared before Sarutobi, it's the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi attacked the village out of nowhere. Sarutobi though, was in motion before the man even arrived, placing his battle-worn bracer on his right forearm as he responded, I know, I'll hold it back. Gather and protect the civilians. Hi. The man acknowledged and disappeared as quickly as he had arrived. Sarutobi then sighed while thinking, did Kushina's seal fail? Were all the safeguards we put in place really not enough? In a crouch, the Yondaime Hokage appeared, arriving on top of the most vertical rock that represented his spiky hair. The Kyuubi noticed immediately and turned his attention towards the most dangerous threat to its existence as the man stood up straight, the wind dramatically blowing his hair and Haori to his left as it whipped by him. So you noticed me already, he commented dryly and watched as the Kyuubi pulled its chakra to its mouth, condensing it into a large and lethal ball of energy. Not on my watch, Minato retaliated as he began to run through some hand seals while the demon launched its attack at him. As it closed in on Minato, it suddenly disappeared and a large seal appeared in the sky in a dome fashion. When the seal faded, Minato was holding both of his hands out before him, fingers spread, the pointer fingers and thumbs touching each other, and held in place by his chakra was one of his Hiraishin tri-pronged kunai. Gotta pick a safe place to let that huge blast detonate, he thought, before picking the exit seal, 5 miles behind Konoha, away from the village. Down below, one Akamichi Shuza commented on the spectacle, it stopped the Kyuubi's attack, that was a Jikuken Kekkei ninjutsu. It's Minato, Shuza's longtime friend, Nara Shikaku, announced, the Junin commander rallying the morale of the villagers. Everyone move out. They then heard the Sandame command. Shouts of, hi, resonated as the Konoha ninja began to counterattack. Back with Minato though, he was preparing to shunshin to Hiruzen's side, thinking, I have to tell the Sandame what happened, when the same man who had attacked him prior, rose up from the top of his face on the mountain. Forced to deal with the man, Minato whipped around, and attempted to drive one of his signature kunai knives into the man's head. But, much to his shock and dismay, the blade phased through him, and as the blade cleared, his opponent reached out and grabbed the Hokage's arm. "You will face me," the man stated. "And we're done." Immediately, the man opened a spiraling vortex that attempted to suck in Minato. But, Minato's Hiraishin was faster, and he escaped the man's trap. He teleported, the man commented in an odd tone. "Talk about fast. Next time, I'll warp you the moment I lay my hand on you." Minato appeared, skidding across the ground with a grunt. My attack slipped right through him. But a moment later he was solid and tried to suck me into some dimension or something. What was that move? A humming sound alerted Minato to said man's arrival, who spoke as he solidified, "You won't escape me." As the two opposing super ninjas stared each other down, Minato's brain was searching for a solution. What is that? Is it a Jikunin jutsu? Whatever he did, it must be how he moved so far after taking Kushina. He defeated Anbu under the direct command of the Sandaime, got past the most top secret barrier we have, and must have known the seal would be weak while Kushina was giving birth. Then with the seal undone he took the Kyuubi and marched straight into Konoha without so much as pausing to deal with the barrier. There's only man I can think of that makes sense. "Are you Uchiha Madara?" Minato questioned. The man didn't answer, choosing instead to remove the hood from his head, revealing short spiky dark hair. "No, you couldn't be," Minato continued. "He's long dead." "Oh," the man interrupted. "I don't know about that." Minato continued as if he did not hear. "On second thought, it doesn't matter who you are. But why have attacked Konoha?" "Oh, you know, it's part of my plan, to start a war, to bring peace. Whoever he is, he's incredible." Minato's thoughts began to fire again. He can control the Kyuubi, wields time-space jutsu that far exceeds that of Nadaime-sama, and clearly has evil intentions. If I don't kill him now, he'll become a greater threat than the fox. Minato stood, prepared to fight, a plan forming. If I teleport back to the village he'll just follow me and things will get even more chaotic. If he really is Madara, then I doubt he can summon the Kyuubi for very long. I'll just have to leave the village in the Sandaime's hands and finish him off right here. There's no hope for any of you. Madara jested as he charged his adversary, a chain, hooked to both wrists, trailing behind himself. As they drew close, Madara phased through Minato's body, and the chain, upon reaching Minato, wrapped around him once Madara snapped his arms around in an attempt to stop Minato's movements. When Madara tried to rip the chain through the Hokage's torso, Minato activated his Hiraishin and teleported to the special kunai that he had used to arrive earlier, escaping the would-be fatal attack. That attack was enough for Minato to understand Madara's strategy as he glanced over his shoulder, eyeing Madara who returned the stare. He makes his body intangible to negate my attacks, then solidifies to counterattack. My only shot is to try and trade hits with him. But attacking at all is a big risk for him. If he can only keep the Kyuubi summoned for a short time, he won't want this fight to drag on. They dashed again, but this time, Minato was armed with another of his kunai. During the rush, the blonde had another thought. It comes down to speed, whoever strikes a split second earlier will win. When they reached 5 feet from one another, Minato slung his kunai forward, watching as it phased through Madara's head. When the pommel was the last part to pass through him, Madara reached forward to grab a hold of Naruto's father as the man charged a Rasengan up in his right hand. "Gotch," Madara thought as his hand connected with Minato's shoulder, briefly, before the man disappeared. "Ghagh," he exclaimed when Minato suddenly appeared above him, and pushed the Rasengan into his back, shredding through the cloak and piercing the flesh as it drove Madara into the dirt. Damn it, he teleported to the kunai he just threw. That was the Hiraishin no Jutsu, level 2, Minato boasted as he continued to force his chakra sphere into the road Uchiha. Madara forced himself to use his phasing technique once more to slip away with a pained groan. When he put some distance between him and Minato, he realized that his left arm was dripping copious amounts of blood and was unable to be moved. And before he could anything else, a glaring Minato materialized before him, via Hiraishin, with a kunai in his left hand poised to gut Madara, and his right hand planting itself on Madara's torso. The Hiraishin no Jutsu, Madara mentally screamed, he must have put that marking somewhere on my body. It was after that thought that Madara realized that Minato was implanting a seal on him and roared, a contract seal. "Are you trying to pull the Kyuubi from my control?" "No," Minato retorted, "I already did. The Kyuubi is no longer your weapon." At that moment, the severing of the control was completed and the Sharingan disappeared from the Kyuubi's eyes as he roared. Amongst the rubble below, the child of 2 of Konoha's Junin was trying to help his injured mother. "Iruka, are you hurt?" his mother asked as blood leaked from her mouth. "Mom," the young boy started, fear gripping him like a choking hand. "Dad, Moms, I'll take care of your mother," the addressed man shouted back to his son. "You get out of here." No way, Dad. I can't leave you and Mom alone. I'll protect her, Iruka protested, only to be stopped in his tracks by his father's angry yell. Cut the crap, he told Iruka. Parents are supposed to protect their children. At the wall, thanks to Minato's actions, the Sandaime and many of the village's most powerful ninja including Akamichi Toru, Mitokado Homura, and Utatane Kaharu were able to drive the Biju out into the forests that surrounded Konoha, preventing any more casualties. Don't stop setting traps, one of the Junin who charged the beast shouted as many ninja continued to leap at it, fully intent on slaying the monstrous creature. Madara escaped by teleporting to a mid-level branch that looked down on the man who had stopped him and complimented, "You deserve the title of Yondaime Hokage, managing to wound me and wrest the fox from my control in one move. But someday it will be mine. The fox and this whole world will bow to my will. Many doors are still left open to me." And just like that, Madara used his jutsu once more to disappear. From his position on the forest floor, Minato glared at where the man had been standing. Something tells me he wasn't lying. Hold on, we've got to hold it off until the Yondaime Hokage gets here. A Junin, bleeding from a slight head wound, shouted to his comrades in arms as they charged the viscous beast once more. Just behind them, a career Chunin grabbed the young Iruka who tried to follow his dad after his mother was no longer amongst the living, having died to protect her son from falling debris. He protested, proclaiming that his parents were still out there and that he needed to be with them. Kuchio's no jutsu, everyone heard. With a large plume of smoke, the large toad, Gamabunta appeared with the Yondaime atop his head, landing directly on the fox's shoulders and subsequently driving the most powerful of the Biju into the earth. Unfortunately, the beast was in the middle of charging up one of its devastating chakra sphere blasts. Hold down the fox for just a minute, Minato yelled out to his longtime partner. I may be big, but I'm not a miracle worker, was the protesting reply. I need enough chakra to take him and that blast out of here. In a last-ditch attempt to destroy everything, the fox swiveled its head around and lined its mouth in the direction of a tired and scraped-up Sandaime Hokage whose eyes widened in fear as the fox prepared to detonate. He was saved a second later when Gamabunta landed on the ground with a resounding thud, as Minato used his Hiraishin to transport the fox and attack away from the village. Minato, Hiruzen tried to figure out what happened. Did he teleport himself and the Kyuubi? He was answered immediately when the fox's attack detonated over 10 miles away. Out there, with an incredibly loud rumble, the fox collapsed on the ground after its rather quick transfer. It took it a minute to figure out where it was at, and the only thing it could see of human construction were a small group of houses that it chose to smash with its paw. But unfortunately for the angry Biju, Minato was able to rescue his wife and son from certain death and held onto them as he appeared in a tree via the use of Shunshin. Gotta put up a barrier, Minato groaned as he began to feel the drain on his chakra from all of his quick movements, coupled with the oppressive aura that radiated from the beast. My chakra's almost drained, Kushina mentioned, the bags under her eyes as pronounced as the tiny whisker marks that adorned their baby's cheeks. With a strained effort, Minato erected an intertwining cage-like barrier that prevented the fox from escaping, and Kushina used what chakra she could spare to use the Uzumaki clan's Kekai Genkai to produce chakra chains that wound around the fox and held it in place. The Kyuubi began to struggle against its bindings, and roared angrily. It had just gotten out of that damn woman, it had important things to do and these ninja were getting in its way. Kushina then dropped to her hands and knees and began to tremble in her efforts to keep her once prisoner at bay, and, surprisingly, that much quieter thud was what woke Naruto into a ear-piercing wail. In panic, Minato cried out to his wife, Kushina. Sorry Naruto, I didn't, she huffed, ignoring her spouse in favor of looking at her baby for a few more minutes, mean to wake you. Kushina, Minato muttered, as he began to understand what his wife was thinking. Now, she turned to him and confirmed his worst fear as she spoke. I'll drag the Kyuubi back, and die with it inside me. That'll prevent it from coming back. For a while, it's the only way to save you both, with the little bit of chakra I have left. Thank you, for everything. She finished speaking with a kilowatt smile that left Minato gasping in sadness. Kushina, you made me your husband, you made me into the Yondaime Hokage, you made me this boy's father. And she cut him off from his rant as the baby in his arm cried out in discontent. Don't look so sad, Minato. I'm happy. Happy that you loved me. Happy that it's our son's birthday TTE Bane. If I try to imagine surviving, and the three of us, living together, I can't think of anything beyond, I'd be so happy. Try as he might, Minato could not stop the swelling tears from falling down his face as he too pictured the scene in his mind. If I had any regrets, Kushina stated as she looked at the newborn in his father's arms, it would be that I won't see Naruto grow up. With a sigh, Minato wiped the tears from his eyes and spoke out, Kushina, you don't need to take the fox down with you. We can use the last of our chakra to see Naruto one more time. That word said it all. She was confused beyond all get out. I'll seal the last of your chakra in Naruto using the Hake no Fuin Shiki. Then I'll lead the fox away with a seal only a non-Jinchuriki like me can use, the Shiki Fuin. But that, the user will be. He continued, but I'll only be able to seal half the fox's power. It's just too great. It's physically and conceptually impossible to completely seal it all. I can't let the Kyuubi be revived without a Jinchuriki. The balance of Biju will be destroyed. But with the Shiki Fuin I can permanently seal half the fox's power along with myself. And the remaining half. He paused as he remembered something his own sensei, Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin spoke to him when he had just become a ninja. You know, you might actually be the destined child. The what child? He had asked. Sometime in the near future the shinobi world will be faced with disaster, and the destined child will be its savior, Jiraiya had responded. Minato looked down once more and noticed that Naruto had cried himself back to sleep and finished his train of thought concerning Naruto and the fox. I'll seal the remaining half inside Naruto with the Hake no Fuin Shiki. Kushina looked like she was about to protest but Minato explained, I know what you want to say, but Jiraiya-sensei spoke of the world undergoing a revolution, and with it, a great disaster. Tonight I've confirmed two things. The first is that masked man, the one who attacked you, he is the harbinger of that disaster. And Naruto will be the one to stop him. The Jinchuriki who will blaze the trail to the future, I just know it. At this time, with his trusty companion Enma in his staff form, Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen landed in a crouch just outside the barrier that Minato used to protect the rest of the world from the fox's destructive capabilities. Back in the barrier, Kushina watched as Naruto was laid on the ground and tried to protest again, but Minato merely flashed through the 9-hand seals to mold his chakra to summon the Shinigami. As the spectral spirit eater materialized behind him, visible to only himself, he said with a smile, have a little faith. He is our son after all. After I finish the Shiki Fuin, I'll place your remaining chakra into Naruto as well. You'll meet the grown-up Naruto sooner than you think. The time will come when he'll attempt to take control of the fox's power. I want you there to help him. Our son. That's why. I don't want him to bear such a heavy burden all on his own. Minato retorted before sighing and looking down at the near-helpless forms of his tired wife and sleeping child. Kushina, though, decided to argue the point anyways, now that Minato had finished his speech. But why? Why the Shiki Fuin? There's no reason for you to die, just so I can see him for a few minutes when he's older. I wanted you to be there for him, I wanted you to raise him. Why? Why are you sacrificing Naruto just to preserve the balance of the Biju, to save the village, to save the country? Why are you sacrificing yourself for me? Turning your back on the village, on the country, is just as bad as abandoning a child. You should understand, you saw your own country fall apart. You know the pain of growing up without a home of your own, and you know that we are a family of shinobi. Kushina would have likely argued, but settled for a glare as her spouse continued to try and justify what he was about to do. Besides, even if I lived I could never be a substitute for you. What? There are things Naruto needs to be told, things I could never say myself. That's the mother's job, and I need you to carry it out even if you only have the briefest of moments to do so. This isn't just for you, this is for Naruto. At this point he knelt down and picked up his baby once more and settled right in front of his wife. Dying to make life better for his son, that's the stuff you let the father handle. Understanding slowly began to manifest itself on her face, but Kushina tried so steal her eyes in a last-ditch effort to go with her plan and save her son the life of many Jinchuriki since the first ones of ages long past, a life of neglect and hatred. One she was one of the very few to have been lucky to have missed. But her husband would not be deterred and held the visage that struck fear into the hearts of many of Iwa's shinobi during the Third Great War. From his position, Sarutobi was finally able to get a glance of something and in fear he gasped, those markings, it can't be, the Shiki Fuin. Before he could do anything else, two of the village's Junin jumped down beside their previous military commander. What's happening, Sandaime? We're too late, he answered. They've put up a barrier around the Kyuubi. Whatever they're doing it alone. With a cry, he tried to use his own chakra to force his way into the barrier and help the Namikaze family. Now, the devourer of spirits was ready and thrust his hand through Minato's stomach from behind and out the front and grabbed onto the monstrosity that towered over him. The fox, unable to speak because of Kushina's chakra bindings, mentally cursed as it felt its power being ripped in two. Fuin, Minato exclaimed, and the fox roared as it felt half of its life force, forcibly rent asunder from its body and pulled away, with no way to prevent it. Gasping, Minato thought, my body's gone numb, what a heavy chakra. It is the Shiki Fuin. I can't believe he actually used it, Sarutobi breathed in shock. It was the most powerful self-sacrificial jutsu for a reason, but to see such a powerful sealing jutsu used against a Biju was breathtakingly scary. But the fox remains. he didn't seal all of it. One of the Junin cried out. But, it's shrunk. No amount of emotional training could have stopped the confusion that laced his voice. Now for the 8 trigrams seal. Minato called out, I'm going to seal the Kyuubi inside Naruto. A puff of smoke followed and a ritual-style altar appeared. From its now shrunken size, the Kyuubi was able to recognize the altar as the ceremonial throne, and realized now that Minato was truly intent on sealing it within the blonde babe. It began to look hopeless for the beast, but Kushina's chakra and strength began to fade as she started to wobble and be racked with searing coughs that in turn caused her control over the chakra chains to lessen just enough for the Kyuubi to try and counterattack the Yondaime and his wife. Kushina, stay with me. Minato hollered as he quickly turned from the throne he had just laid Naruto on. The Kyuubi raised its right forepaw in preparation to slam its paw down. However, its efforts were in vain as Minato was able to grab hold of his wife and threw himself in line with the demon's claw and used his own body to stop the claw from attacking his son, and Kushina was able to refocus enough to re-ensnare the beast once more, ensuring its unwilling stillness. The blood-soaked claw stopped a mere 3 inches above Naruto's chin and the dying parents breathed a sigh of relief. If the father can do his job, Minato said, trying to alleviate some stress. Kushina picked up on it, and completed the thought, that the mother should be even better, right? Sarutobi was astounded, is that their child? They protected it, a Junin stated. Damned humans. The Kyuubi growled in indignation. Ignoring the fox, Kushina glanced behind her where her husband was impaled on the claw directly behind her, as she sat on said claw and rasped, you win, first argument, you've ever won, I guess, you're really serious. He chuckled, thank you, Kushina, working as quickly as he could, Minato quickly summoned a toad. Said toad looked around and freaked, ah, the Kyuubi. And Yondaime. What the hell happened to you? Gamatora, I'm entrusting you with the key to this seal, Minato spoke, forced to work fast as his life force waned. Hurry to Jiraiya-sensei. Store it within him. With that, he plunged his hand into the toad's gut, which caused a scroll to wrap around him and extend his height to that of a full-grown man. From his spot, Sarutobi finally pieced together the puzzle. I see, Minato intends to save the village by making his son the new Jinchuriki. Got it, Gamatora proclaimed as the seal's key rolled up on the scroll. Good. Goodbye. That does it, Minato muttered as the toad disappeared to carry out its mission. It's time for me to go, Kushina. I'm going to perform the 8 trigrams seal, and try to leave a little of my own chakra in Naruto too. We don't have much time, if you have anything to say to Naruto. Kushina bowed her head in understanding, too tired to nod fully, and huffed out with the last of her strength. Naruto, don't be a fussy eater, eat a lot and grow up to be a big boy. Take your bath every day, go to bed early and sleep well. Make friends, it doesn't matter how many, just make sure they're real friends, people you can trust, even a few is enough. And study your ninjutsu. I was never very good at it, maybe you will be. Everyone has things they're good and things they're not, don't feel bad if you can't do it all. Make sure to listen to your teachers, at the academy. And remember to avoid the 3 vices of shinobi, don't borrow money if you can help it. Save what you earn from missions, no drinking alcohol until you're 20, and don't overdo it or you'll ruin your body. And as for women, well, I'm a woman so I don't know what to say, but there are only men and women in the world, so be nice to Mei-chan, she doesn't seem to be too weird, she's a lot like me. And the 4th warning, watch out for Jiraiya-sensei. She paused to smile as blood poured out of her mouth as it rose up from the pit of her stomach and spoke again with tears streaming down her face. Naruto, you're going to experience a lot of pain and suffering, remember who you are. Find a goal, a dream, and don't stop trying until it comes true. There's so much more I want to say, to teach you about. I want to stay with you, I love you. Minato sighed but kept his mouth shut, and Kushina realized, I'm sorry Minato, I took all our time. It's okay, he supplied. Naruto, this is your dad. Listen to your motor mouth mother.